Hello, guys. It's Jennifer, and today I am telling the story of Medusa. I will take a few artistic liberties, but overall, we're going to stick to the classic storyline from Ovid's Metamorphosis. I quickly had a couple of things to ease you into the story, but I will also give you the timestamps if you're just really eager to jump in. Most of you already know this, but Medusa's story is a horror story, and it includes her being a sexual assault victim, as was really very normalized in the myths of this era. Besides myself being a storyteller, I'm also a somatic movement educator and therapist, so I will always encourage you as you listen to this or anything else, just pay attention to how your body is responding. I believe that's important, even though it may go without saying, but really we're undoing thousands of years of this patriarchal control system that normalized things that were not okay, including violence against women. So, in Medusa's story, there is symbolism and there is value to be found in it, and that's why we're here. It also comes from the bowels of that control system. So, if your body is pushing back against the story, consider that brilliant and honor it. Just so you know, all of this will be framed psychologically, and we're looking at how trauma gets internalized. Every aspect and character is going to represent one part of a person's psyche, an individual's inner world. And yes, that does include the god Poseidon, which, if you know the part of the story that I was just talking about, it's like, ick, really. I realize that is a bit of a mind bender, but in these myths, gods represent big, unfiltered, archetypal energies that exist in the collective consciousness and sometimes act with force on the human experience. Symbolically, Poseidon, also known as Neptune, is the ruler of the unconscious. So everything that operates beyond or deep below our awareness. It's the god at the bottom of the ocean and the planet at the edge of the galaxy. So what is happening in the psyche when Poseidon shows up? We're seeing something that was unconscious being brought to the surface. So just keep that in mind as you listen. It makes it much less disturbing. I will also have a video separately that will go deep into the rest of the symbolism. There is a lot here. At that point, we'll be diving into the psychological and spiritual abuse aspects, the narcissistic power structures, and how these things get internalized and how our nervous systems respond, including, of course, turning to stone. We'll also be looking at the concepts of psychic death and rebirth. I will be layering in that astrological symbolism as well, which makes it all the more juicy and deep and also relatable. Without further ado, let's jump into this internal journey, and I won't be using, as usual, a lot of pictures or graphics or any, and that is purposeful so you can connect with your own image maker and take that internal journey as you hear Medusa's story. Let's get into it. Once there was a maiden who was much like any other girl. Had she lived in a different time and place, she would have been just another beauty who grew up, found love, perhaps had a family and watched them grow. In time, her golden tresses would have turned silver. No one would have known her name. But alas, that was not the case. There was something stunning about this maiden. From the time she was tiny, she had this crown of flowing locks that made people stare, and all too often reach out to touch. The color, the way it caught the light, her hair almost seemed to have a life of its own. Sure, she felt some pride in her striking appearance, but she also knew all that attention left her vulnerable. Serving as a priestess in Athena's temple seemed like it would be a protection. But again, that was not the case. This maiden's name was Medusa. Medusa enjoyed serving at the temple, well, mostly. She was close with her sister priestesses. The work felt meaningful, and when it didn't, she assured herself it was. She told herself how lucky she was to be there, protected from the outside world. Yet Athena's temple was not a pleasant place to be. You see, Athena was a goddess who embodied the wisdom of that time, which is perhaps the same kind that our modern world values: sharp, intelligent, crafty, strategic. But she was missing something, and its absence felt like a chill hanging in the temple air, a place where warmth couldn't quite reach. You see, Athena was missing the wisdom of the mother, for her own mother could only ensure her daughter's survival, armoring her for an entrance into the world, not through the warm, watery depths of a womb, but through her father's skull. Now, everyone was impressed by this brainchild of Zeus. They didn't notice what Athena was missing, because most of them were missing it too. There was someone else whose heavy, oceanic presence was felt at Athena's temple, even when he was not seen: Poseidon. The priestesses didn't speak of him, but they all felt the god of the sea, like a saltwater fog hanging over their thoughts. They felt him in dreams, where they thrashed about as though tangled in seaweed, but could not remember once they awoke. They felt him in confusion they couldn't quite name, the kind that makes it hard to breathe and harder to think, as part of you is always scanning, trying to read the air, bracing for whatever might happen next. Sometimes the priestesses wondered if they were crazy, but everything they sensed was accurate. The god of the sea was watching. Something would happen next. It seemed like a normal day. Medusa was outside of the temple, attending to her daily chores, when the hair on her neck rose, and she had the sensation of eyes following her movements. She looked around for some reassuring presence. No one. She tried to hurry herself along, but as she worked, the wind picked up, and suddenly a damp, thick, seaweed-laced fog surrounded her. She dropped everything and bolted into the sacred space of the temple. But the fog followed and descended on her, and suddenly she felt as heavy as a stone. She could not move. She could not make a sound. That was all Medusa remembered. But when she woke up on the floor of the temple, she knew something was different, and she was very frightened by the feeling. Medusa realized she needed to tell someone. Athena certainly had the power to help her, and there really wasn't anyone else she could petition to. The poor maiden was hopeful that the goddess would offer not only the wisdom and strategy she was known for, but also compassion. Well, Athena was already waiting for Medusa, but there was not so much as a glimmer of kindness in her eyes. "Medusa, you wretched girl! How dare you show your face here after what you did?" Medusa was so shocked, she again found herself unable to move or speak. "Have you nothing to say for yourself?" Athena gave Medusa no time to gather her thoughts. "You disgusting creature, using your obscene hair to lure Poseidon into this sacred space. I had to look away so my own eyes were not defiled." Hearing this, Medusa felt the life further drain from her body. Her stomach felt like it might fall right out. Athena had seen what had happened and had chosen not to stop it. "You didn't help me." Medusa barely squeaked out the words. "Is that what this is all about? I didn't help you enough, so you thought you'd get my uncle Poseidon to help you instead. See how much he does for you now, you power-hungry little wench." Athena clearly did not understand at all, and Medusa could not access the ability to explain. "Obviously, I cannot let this level of betrayal go unpunished. It would be an insult to the gods. You must be banished." "But I couldn't move," Medusa whispered, desperate to convey something she had not fully processed. "He's a monster." Athena stepped closer, lifted her scepter, and glaring unflinchingly into Medusa's eyes, she made the pronouncement: "You're the only monster here, and now everyone shall know it." With that, poor Medusa felt her skin grow tingly, then hot, burning like poison ivy. Everywhere, but especially her scalp. She reached up, feeling her soft hair for the last time, as the skin there was erupting with what seemed to be giant hives. It was the last thing she felt from the body she knew. Her soul seemed to be watching from the ceiling as the hives broke open like eggs. and the serpents emerged. From that vantage point, Medusa heard the echo of Athena's next words. Guards, take the traitor away. Cover her face first if you want to live. The next thing Medusa remembered, she was on the ground with her hands tied and some kind of sack over her head, making it difficult to breathe. She felt the snakes writhing and heard hissing as they tried to find their way out. This was terrifying in itself. Medusa stayed very still, wishing she had not awoken. There were men's voices not far off, but it was hard to make out under the circumstances. She heard one getting closer. Curse Athena! I won't leave the girl tied. I'll cut the ropes. Move as fast as you can to the ship. Medusa felt her wrists being grabbed, and a swift cut was made to the thick rope around them. She wriggled her hands free and reached for the bag over her head, desperate for a full breath of air. The man was running away, the others already further ahead, and Medusa tried to cry out for help. In her mind, she was saying, Wait, help, don't leave me here. But she couldn't hear her own voice coming out of her mouth. All she heard was a deafening roar, a sound only a monster could produce. The men were as shocked as she was, and the last one turned around, just briefly enough to meet Medusa's desperate gaze. She recognized him as one of the temple guards, and in that instant she thought he would see her, that she was still herself, trapped by a curse she did not deserve. But instead, something terrible happened. The man didn't move another inch. He was turning to stone. Medusa watched from the same place as the remaining men scrambled onto their ship, which quickly sailed and disappeared over the horizon. She would occasionally glance at the statue form of the one left behind, wondering if he was also trapped inside a cursed body that might return to normal. She tried to push away what she already knew, that looking into her eyes had drained every bit of his life force. Overwhelmed by horror, Medusa could not bear to think or feel or even try to move. She collapsed into numbness, her body trying to escape itself, trying to drown out the hissing snakes. Well, as it turned out, Medusa was not the only one on this island. When she awoke again, she was no longer on the beach but inside a cave. As her eyes adjusted to the flickering light, Medusa made out two imposing figures. The first thing she noticed was the rhythmic movements around their heads. Snakes. There, dear. Do not be afraid. The slightly smaller of the two sat by Medusa's side, setting a clawed hand gently on her shoulder. Even the snakes on Medusa's head seemed to settle, charmed by the care of this frightful-looking being. Who are you? Where am I? Oh, God, don't look at me. That man, The memory of what had happened came rushing back to Medusa's mind, and the snakes started to hiss again. Don't worry, child. You cannot harm us. I am Euryale. This is my sister Steno. We are Gorgons, like you, but a little different. Medusa had heard of Gorgons, the terrifying creatures no human could bear to look at. Gorgons, like you. The weight of those words landed like a rock on Medusa's chest. Different how? Was her hopeful next question. Oh, well, you are human, dear. We are of the gods. Euryale explained thoughtfully. Medusa's eyes grew wide. Did Athena banish you too? Steno jumped into the conversation. Athena has no power over us. The problem is humans are deathly afraid of us. So we are here until the day comes when they can see us. Then we will bring our gifts into the world. But it will be a long time. How long? Medusa probed, not sure if this almost prophetic-sounding statement applied to her too. Steno's snakes bobbed about as she contemplated this question. Maybe 3,000 to 4,000 years. Medusa gasped and heard a monstrous wail arising from her chest. Euryale, shooting her sister a look, put her arms around Medusa. There, my dear. Do not worry about us. You are still human and cannot stay in this form forever. The seeds of transformation are growing in you, aren't they? Medusa nodded a small yes, both frightened and comforted that Euryale understood her secret. This will not be easy for you, dear, but you must hold on to hope. Medusa would find that easier said than done. While Steno and Euryale were incredibly caring and protective of their new little sister, they could not completely shield her. You see, the human world was not content to let the Gorgons keep to themselves. The story of the guard who had turned to stone was spreading, and the anti-Gorgon fervor was growing. The general consensus was that everyone would be safer if the sisters did not exist. Soon, hunters began to show up on the island's shores, eager to prove their heroism by returning with the head of a Gorgon. Steno and Euryale were incredibly fierce when needed and held the line when the hunters came, while Medusa, the only one who was really in danger, tried to stay hidden. But one day, feeling desperate to get out of the cave and see the water, she wandered to the beach. The sun felt wonderful, even on her thick, crackled skin. But suddenly, the snakes started to hiss. Hunters. Medusa's mind raced. Can I run? No, they've seen me. Why are they doing this? Maybe I can talk some sense into them. But as she saw the men moving toward her, something else entirely took over. A red, hot rage filled her Gorgon body. Claws flared, the snakes rose in striking position, and the blood-curdling roar that was not hers radiated out of her throat. Her eyes forcefully darted to catch each man's. One by one, she unflinchingly watched the hunters petrify. When it was over, Medusa collapsed into tears. This was not the last time Medusa would have to be the one to swiftly end a hunter's mission. She did not relish doing it, but in the moment there really was no choice. It was survival, and instinct took over. Yet, despite the unconscious nature of her reactions, she knew there was something worth protecting at all costs. In time, that protective nature would need to take a different form. Time did pass, and Medusa grew weary. She was tired of being trapped inside a body that would never feel like her own. Tired of the snakes hissing. Tired of being the monster someone else created. Euryale and Steno grieved seeing Medusa suffer, but they understood her time with them was limited, that her mortal form could not sustain the life within her. The gods realized this too, and decided it was time to intervene. They would send someone, a mortal man, really no different from anyone who came before. Not brilliant, not heroic, just really an energy source used by the gods to set something free. His name was Perseus. Medusa knew it was time. What was ready to be born could not survive if she did not surrender to what was coming. She would have to face what she was most afraid of. Yet, the decision no longer felt difficult or really like a decision at all. Not just because of exhaustion, but more than anything, because Medusa now had something Athena never would. She had the wisdom of the Great Mother. She knew what it was to love, nurture, protect, and sacrifice. And that is what she would do. So, when Steno, who nothing could get past, came back to the cave with the news, Perseus was on his way, equipped by the gods, with winged sandals, a helmet of invisibility, a sickle-shaped sword from Hermes, and a reflective shield from Athena. Medusa only hugged her sisters before placing her hand on her very round belly. She whispered a prayer to someone no one of that world knew, laid down, and went to sleep. Not even the snakes twitched when Perseus stepped into the cave, clutching sword and shield, unsure of whether he would ever leave. He did not know. Medusa herself had already decided their fate. Her eyes fluttered open, and she caught sight of the polished bronze surface coming toward her. The last thing she had to do was the most frightening, looking at her own reflection. In that instant, she realized, despite the gruesome reality, her soul was still her own. The rest was over quickly. As Perseus shoved Medusa's Gorgon head into a bag and collected the vials of blood requested by Athena, he should not have been surprised at what happened next. The body that might have been lifeless was not yet done producing life. Not one, but two beings were being born. The children Medusa did not ask for, but still had nurtured deep within her altered body, fiercely protecting them from all the hunters who had come before. There was Pegasus, a winged horse, and Chrysor, a born warrior. Thanks to Medusa's care and sacrifice, these babies entered the world embodying pure transcendence and power. The vials of Medusa's blood would serve another purpose. One would be potent healing medicine, and one equally potent poison to be used when needed. The petrifying power of her Gorgon face would also live on. Perseus would use her head on Athena's shield to stop a sea monster in its tracks and save Princess Andromeda. And so, in the strangest of ways, the curse put on the maiden Medusa became something that saved another maiden, turning a monster into stone. In time, people heard Medusa's story, and they came to revere her fearful Gorgon face and snake hair, placing her image on medallions and buildings as if it might protect them from gods and monsters. They even came to call one of the fixed stars in the sky the head of Medusa. That star is also called Algol, and people used to say it brought curses. But now we understand it better. We understand that tragedy and horror are never the entire story. Somehow life persists. We come face to face with what petrifies us from within, and we learn to meet our own gaze. Eventually, we find we are ready to let go of what kept us alive but no longer supports our future, even though no part of it was easy, and we grieve for everything that might have been. At some point, we recognize that through it all, we were gestating power so we could birth transcendence. Like Medusa, eventually we just might become a star. Not the lucky kind, maybe, but one that is fixed in the sky, watching over and lighting someone else's darkest night. That's the end of our story. I hope you will join me in the next video. We're going to take apart the symbolism, and it's going to be really juicy and fun, and I hope you'll nerd out with me on that. And I hope you will like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more story medicine, including original, brand new, completely human written stories about the human mind, body, soul experience. Either way, I hope you enjoyed taking this journey with me and hearing the story of Medusa. Thank you for being here.